There is a particular kind of silence that lives inside every man who has loved too much. It's not the silence of peace. It's the echo that remains when you've built your entire worth in someone else's eyes and they suddenly look away. That silence screams. It echoes in empty rooms, in unread messages, in the space between one heartbeat and another. It's the sound of dependence, the invisible wound no one sees, but everyone feels when they've given the power to define themselves to another person. You weren't born this way. No man is. As children, we learn that affection is a reward and absence is punishment. We grow up chasing validation like a starving animal hunts for food. Each smile becomes a permission to exist, each rejection a death sentence. And somewhere along the way, you begin to believe that to be loved is to be complete, and to be alone is to be broken. But dependency is a quiet poison. It disguises itself as love, as care, as passion. It tells you that needing someone is proof of connection, when in truth it's proof of disconnection from yourself. Every time you bend your truth to keep someone close, you're whispering to your own soul, "You're not enough." And that whisper becomes a prison, built not from walls, but from expectations. You start performing instead of living. You speak to please. You smile to avoid conflict. You shrink just enough to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Until one day you look at yourself and realize that you've become a stranger wearing the mask of the man she once loved. Dependency does that. It steals your reflection while pretending to be affection. There comes a moment, painful, raw, unforgettable, when the man inside you finally breaks the mirror. He sees the fragments of his identity scattered on the floor and understands no one is coming to put them back together. And that's the first step toward freedom. Not joy, not relief, but clarity. Clarity that love, when built on need, is just a beautiful form of imprisonment. To stop depending doesn't mean to stop caring. It means to love without begging, to give without losing yourself, to share your world without abandoning your throne. The man who learns this truth doesn't stop loving. He simply stops bleeding for it.
The void left by those who never stayed. There's a strange kind of emptiness that doesn't come from loss, but from almosts. From the people who entered your life like storms, loud, beautiful, unforgettable, only to vanish before the dust even settled. They never truly stayed, but they took something with them when they left. Not your possessions, not your time, something far more fragile, your sense of permanence. You start to fear silence, not because it's loud, but because it reminds you of how easily someone can disappear. You replay conversations, reread messages, overanalyze moments that no longer exist. And the cruelest part? They're not even thinking about it. You are alone, fighting ghosts that don't even know they haunt you. The void they leave behind is deceptive. At first, it feels like proof that you once had something real. But in truth, it's proof that you built too much meaning on a presence that was never meant to last. You mistook intensity for intimacy, attention for affection, chaos for connection. And now, every time someone new appears, you brace for the ending before the beginning even unfolds. You become suspicious of kindness, allergic to attachment, addicted to distance. Not because you want to be cold, but because you've learned that warmth burns when it isn't constant. But here's the paradox. The void they left behind was never meant to be filled by another person. It exists to be filled by you. That hollow space is not punishment. It's a demand for reconstruction. It asks you to rebuild your center, not around someone else's orbit, but around your own gravity. Because when you finally stop waiting for them to return, you'll realize they were never the source of your peace, only the trigger of your awakening.
3. When love becomes a form of begging. Love, when pure, is freedom, but when mixed with fear, it becomes a cage you build with your own hands. You don't even notice when it happens. It starts with small sacrifices. A text you send first, an apology you didn't owe, a silence you keep just to avoid being misunderstood. Soon, you're not loving anymore. You're negotiating for crumbs of affection, bartering pieces of your dignity just to feel seen. This is when love mutates into begging. Not the kind you do with words, but with energy. It's in the way you wait for a reply that never comes, the way you read someone's indifference as a test you must pass. You begin to confuse humiliation with devotion, endurance with loyalty. And before you realize it, you're kneeling emotionally, worshiping an illusion you helped create. There's a cruel truth that most people never face. The moment you start chasing love, it stops being love. It becomes dependency, a desperate attempt to fill the space where your self-respect used to live. You don't love them anymore. You love the idea of being loved back. And that idea is a drug. But here's the paradox. The less you need, the more magnetic you become. The less you explain, the more they want to understand you. Because power in love isn't about domination, it's about composure. The man who doesn't beg, who can stay silent in the face of rejection, becomes a mirror that reflects something rare: wholeness. He doesn't love to be saved. He loves because he already survived.
There's a moment every man faces, though few recognize it when it comes. It's the quiet instant when your reflection stops belonging to you. When you start seeing yourself not through your own eyes, but through the gaze of someone's approval you crave. And from that moment on, every action, every word, every choice becomes a performance, a desperate attempt to protect an image that was never truly yours. You wake up thinking about what they'll think. You speak not to express truth, but to avoid rejection. You begin editing your essence like a writer afraid of bad reviews. That's how authenticity dies, not in a single blow, but in 1,000 small concessions. When your worth depends on another person's perception, you're no longer living, you're auditioning. And the cruelest part is, no one ever tells you the role you're supposed to play. So you keep guessing, bending, smiling when you want to scream, agreeing when you want to walk away. Until one day you look in the mirror and realize the person staring back is unrecognizable, not because you've changed, but because you've vanished. The truth is brutal but liberating. No one can give you value. They can only reflect the value you already recognize in yourself. When you forget this, every relationship becomes a negotiation, a silent contract where your peace is the price for their affection. You stop being the main character of your life and become a background actor in someone else's story. But when you finally reclaim your worth, not the one they gave you, but the one you were born with, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop convincing and start commanding. Because confidence isn't loud, it's the quiet certainty that you no longer need to be seen to know you exist.
Solitude terrifies most people because it strips away every illusion. When the noise fades, there's nothing left to hide behind, no audience to impress, no mirror to adjust for. Just you. Your fears, your desires, your unhealed wounds sitting quietly in the same room. That's why loneliness feels unbearable, not because of the absence of others, but because of the presence of yourself. Yet, solitude was never meant to be a prison. It's the forge where real men are made. It's the sacred space where dependency dies and sovereignty is born. When you stop trying to escape it, you begin to hear something beneath the silence, the faint pulse of your own essence. It's not loud, it doesn't beg for attention, but it's steady. And once you find that rhythm, you realize it was never loneliness, it was clarity. The world teaches you to fear being alone because solitude makes you powerful. It reveals how little you actually need. It exposes who you were pretending to be just to be accepted. It reminds you that company means nothing if it costs you your peace. That's why those who learn to stand in silence often walk differently when they return. Slower, sharper, heavier with purpose. Solitude is not the punishment for the weak. It's the initiation of the strong. Because to sit with your own chaos and not run away, that's mastery. That's where the noise of the world fades and the voice of your truth begins. And the man who learns to listen to that voice doesn't chase love or validation anymore. He attracts both, quietly, effortlessly, because he has passed the test that most never dare to face, to be alone and remain whole.
There comes a day when the noise of the world stops being louder than the noise inside your head. And in that pause, that terrifying, holy pause, you realize how much of your life was lived in reaction. Every opinion you defended, every argument you chased, every word you spoke was not born from truth, but from the need to be heard, to prove you existed, to matter. But then silence finds you, not the silence of absence, the silence of presence. It doesn't come gently. It arrives like a storm that destroys before it rebuilds. It tears away the background chatter, the opinions of others, the endless self-explanations. And what's left is unsettling, a stillness that demands honesty. Inner silence is not emptiness, it's a mirror. It shows you the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the bitterness you call wisdom, the fear you call prudence, the pain you disguise as strength. At first you want to run. You look for distractions, for company, for noise, anything to avoid the reflection. But if you stay long enough, if you breathe through the discomfort, something miraculous happens. The silence stops being a threat. It becomes a teacher. It begins to speak, not in words, but in clarity. You start understanding that not every emotion requires expression. Not every wound needs an audience. That peace doesn't come from saying more, but from meaning what you say. And that real power has no need to announce itself. The man who discovers inner silence becomes different. He listens more, reacts less. He stops explaining his worth because he feels it pulsing quietly beneath his skin. He no longer fears being misunderstood because truth, when spoken softly, carries farther than any scream. Silence, once a prison, becomes a throne. And on that throne, he sits, not above others, but above his own chaos.
7. The moment a man realizes no one is coming to save him. There's a breaking point in every man's life. A moment so heavy, it doesn't announce itself with sound, but with silence. It's the night when the calls stop coming, when no one checks if you're okay, when the world moves on as if your struggle were invisible. At first, you feel betrayed, forgotten. But what you're actually witnessing is a sacred truth. No one is coming. No one is coming to make sense of your pain. No one is coming to carry your weight, to fix your mistakes, to hand you peace. And that realization, brutal as it is the first breath of real freedom. Because when you finally stop waiting for rescue, you stop being a victim of your own expectations. The world raised you to believe that love would save you, that someone somewhere would see your worth and fill the emptiness inside. But salvation is not delivered, it's forged. It's the moment when, instead of reaching out for a hand, you plant your own feet firmly on the ground and decide, I'll stand anyway. It's terrifying, this awakening. You look around and see how fragile everything is. Your relationships, your plans, your confidence. You realize that all the things you depended on were never foundations, only props, and one by one they fall, until the only thing standing is you. That's when the man is born again. Not the man society wanted, obedient, polite, dependent, but the man who knows how to hold his own storm without asking for shelter. He becomes quiet, focused, almost dangerous, not because he seeks control, but because he finally owns his life, his pain, and his direction. No one is coming, and that's not tragedy. That's initiation. Because once you understand that truth deeply, you stop living like a beggar of fate. You become its architect.
The transition from needy to self-sufficient. Transformation never happens overnight. It begins quietly, in small refusals. The message you no longer send, the explanation you no longer owe, the apology you decide not to offer for simply existing. At first, it feels wrong. It feels like you're losing something, like you're becoming colder. But you're not growing cold, you're growing solid. Neediness is a hunger disguised as love. It's the echo of a child who learned that affection must be earned. And every time you beg for attention, you're still that child, knocking on a door that was never yours to enter. Self-sufficiency begins when you stop knocking. When you turn around and realize that the home you've been searching for was supposed to be built within you. The shift is subtle, almost invisible. You stop checking your phone every minute. You stop explaining your silence. You start investing in your craft, your body, your peace. And the more you build, the less you chase. Because creation replaces craving. It's not that you stop needing people altogether. It's that you stop needing them to complete you. You still love, you still care, but the energy changes. You give because you overflow, not because you're empty. And that difference is everything. The man who becomes self-sufficient walks differently. There's a gravity around him, not arrogance, but quiet certainty. He doesn't demand attention, yet rooms seem to notice when he enters. He's not desperate for love because he embodies it. Discipline, direction, purpose. People are drawn to that kind of energy, the way fire draws the cold. This is the transition most never make, to move from needing to being. And when you arrive there, you don't shout your independence. You breathe it. Calm,
grounded, whole.
The danger of mistaking coldness for strength. After a man has been wounded too many times, silence becomes his armor. He learns to speak less, feel less, expect less, because each disappointment taught him that vulnerability costs blood. And in that slow retreat from emotion, something tragic happens. He mistakes numbness for control. The world applauds this illusion. Be cold, they say. Don't care, don't feel. That's how you win. But what they call strength is often just fear in disguise. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of needing again. Fear of remembering what it felt like to care and lose. Coldness is not mastery. It's paralysis wearing the mask of power. Real strength is not about closing your heart. It's about keeping it open in a world that constantly tries to break it. The strong man doesn't build walls, he builds foundations. He knows that control without compassion is tyranny, and detachment without purpose is emptiness. So he chooses something harder: to stay human. There's a certain kind of bravery in allowing yourself to feel everything: the ache, the desire, the fear, and still not be consumed by it. That's what separates the cold from the composed. One hides, the other governs. A cold man repels love and calls it peace. A strong man holds love without losing himself in it. He can sit in his solitude without bitterness, speak with calm even when angry, and walk away without needing to prove his worth. Coldness isolates. Strength integrates. One kills connection, the other refines it. So the goal is not to become untouchable, it's to become unshakable. To stand firm, heart still beating, in a world that confuses indifference with wisdom. Because the man who can feel deeply and still remain composed doesn't just survive the storm, he becomes the calm within it.
There comes a season in every man's life when the ground beneath him collapses. Plans crumble, people vanish, dreams dissolve like smoke. And in that quiet wreckage, he meets the only version of himself that truly matters. The one who refuses to fall with everything else. It's not heroism, it's instinct. Something primal awakens when there's nothing left to hold on to. The noise fades, the masks drop, and what remains is raw. A man stripped of comfort, pride, and illusion. That's when he learns what strength really is. Not the ability to fight, but the refusal to break. When everything collapses, the world expects you to beg, to complain, to crumble. But the man who remains standing sends a different message, not to others, but to life itself. He says, "You can take everything from me except my posture." That posture, quiet, upright, unyielding, is what life respects. Standing doesn't mean you feel no pain. It means you've stopped letting pain decide who you are. It means the storm can roar, but you stay centered. The world can mock, but you stay dignified. Every scar becomes a scripture, every wound a teacher. Because truthfully, no one remembers the man who had it easy. People remember the one who stood tall in the ruins and smiled, not from arrogance, but from understanding. He learned something the broken world cannot grasp, that peace isn't found in avoiding destruction, but in enduring it without losing your shape. The man who stands when everything falls is not fearless, he's faithful. Faithful to himself, faithful to the fire that forged him. And when the dust settles, he doesn't rise as someone new. He simply reveals who he always was, beneath the noise, beneath the masks. The man who never bowed.
Mastery over emotion, the true crown of kingship. The world teaches men to chase control over money, over women, over circumstances. But the rarest and highest form of power is control over oneself. You can't conquer what you refuse to confront, and the man who hasn't learned to command his emotions is still a servant, no matter how high he climbs. Mastery over emotion doesn't mean suppression. It means recognition without surrender. It's looking rage in the eye and saying, "You will not steer me." It's feeling heartbreak claw at your chest and replying, "You may stay, but you won't rule." Real kings don't live without storms. They simply learn how to reign through them. Emotional mastery is the discipline of dignity. It's knowing that peace is not given, it's guarded. That silence and provocation is not weakness, it's precision. You learn to pause before speaking, to breathe before reacting, to observe before deciding. And each time you do, you rise one level higher in the hierarchy of self. The man who governs his emotions becomes magnetic. His calm disarms chaos. His restraint demands respect. People test him, provoke him, even envy him, but none can shake him, because he no longer dances to the rhythm of others. He moves to the pulse of his own command. This is the crown most men never wear. It's not made of gold or glory, it's made of composure. Every outburst you resist, every impulse you master, every silence you choose instead of shouting, those are jewels in that invisible crown. To be king is not to rule others. It's to rule the kingdom within. Your thoughts, your emotions, your instincts. Because once a man commands his inner empire, no external storm can ever dethrone him.
Selective presence. Being without fully surrendering. There's a certain kind of strength in being there, but not owned by the moment. Most men don't understand this. They believe presence means total exposure, emotional nakedness, the surrender of every piece of themselves to be seen, validated, or loved. But selective presence is different. It's the art of showing up without dissolving. You can be fully engaged and still remain untouchable. You can listen deeply and still guard the sacred parts of your soul. You can love passionately without offering your peace as collateral. That's what it means to be present but whole. Selective presence is not withdrawal, it's discernment. It's knowing that your attention is currency, and not everyone deserves to spend it. It's realizing that your time, your energy, your silence are all extensions of your worth. And when you give them freely to everyone, you become poor in the only economy that matters, the economy of spirit. A man who learns this moves differently. He doesn't vanish out of pride. He disappears out of purpose. He doesn't respond to every call. He answers only those that align with his direction. And in a world addicted to noise, his restraint feels magnetic. People crave what they can't fully possess, and his mystery becomes a form of gravity. But the deeper truth is that selective presence isn't manipulation, it's mastery. It's protecting your essence from dilution. Because when everything in you is available, nothing in you is valued. Presence, like power, must have boundaries to mean something. The man who understands this no longer seeks to impress. He simply is. And the quiet certainty of that being, complete, composed, unbent, is what makes others lean closer, not because he chases, but because he chooses when and where to exist fully.
Respect is born where attachment dies. Respect doesn't grow in the soil of need. It grows in the space where freedom breathes, where a man no longer clings, but chooses. Attachment by nature suffocates. It demands, it fears, it controls. And what it calls love is often just the terror of being alone, dressed in poetry. A man ruled by attachment confuses possession with connection. He doesn't love her presence, he fears her absence. He mistakes control for intimacy, routine for loyalty, comfort for meaning. But the moment he dares to loosen his grip, something strange happens. The respect he's been chasing begins to appear on its own. Why? Because need repels what choice attracts. When you stop depending, people stop taking you for granted. When you no longer need to be loved, your love becomes powerful because it's free. Freedom is magnetic. It's the quiet confidence of a man who knows he can walk away, but chooses to stay. Attachment screams, "Don't leave me!" Respect whispers, "You're welcome to go." The difference between the two is self-worth. And self-worth doesn't come from having everything. It comes from knowing that nothing external defines you. When a man kills attachment within himself, he doesn't become cold, he becomes clear. He gives from abundance, not from lack. He listens without needing to be right. He loves without demanding ownership. And the people around him, women, friends, even enemies, sense it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. This man cannot be manipulated by fear of loss. That's the paradox of respect. It blooms only in the absence of desperation. You stop asking for it the moment you become it.
The highest form of love isn't possession, it's permission. Permission for the other to exist fully without needing to shrink to fit your comfort. Permission for yourself to love without losing your shape. Freedom is the ultimate proof of love, because it asks for nothing and gives everything. Most people fear this kind of love because it dismantles the illusion of control. They think freedom means distance, detachment, indifference. But it's the opposite. Freedom is the space where authenticity breathes. It's where you can say, I choose you, instead of, I need you. And that difference changes everything. When love is rooted in freedom, there are no chains, only gravity. Each person moves within their own orbit, and yet something invisible keeps them aligned. Not fear, not duty, but respect. The bond becomes sacred precisely because it could end at any time, and both choose to stay anyway. That choice, renewed in every moment, is what makes love alive instead of mechanical. Freedom in love is not a lack of care. It's care without corruption. It's not the absence of desire. It's desire without desperation. It's not a cold detachment. It's warmth that doesn't burn. Because when you stop trying to own someone, you finally start seeing them. And when you stop fearing loss, love transforms from a prison into a pilgrimage. Something that refines you, not consumes you. A free man doesn't chase, he invites. He doesn't cling, he connects. He doesn't demand promises because his peace doesn't depend on them. He knows that love given under fear is slavery, but love given through freedom, that's devotion. In the end, freedom is not the opposite of love. It's its test. If it dies in freedom, it was never love, only attachment wearing its mask. But if it survives, it becomes something eternal. A union between two complete beings who could walk away,
yet choose every day to walk together.
The rebirth of the sovereign man, the one who doesn't need but chooses. When a man finally reaches the point where he no longer needs, something profound awakens in him. It's not arrogance, not detachment, it's sovereignty. He has walked through the ruins of dependency, faced the mirror of loneliness, survived the silence of loss, and emerged with one unshakable truth. Everything he was searching for in others, he was meant to find within himself. This is the rebirth, not the creation of a new man, but the return of the one who was always there, buried under noise, fear, and longing. He no longer builds his identity from admiration or validation. He builds it from discipline, integrity, and purpose. The same energy he once wasted chasing approval now fuels his empire, quiet, consistent, unstoppable. The sovereign man is not against love, he simply refuses to worship it. He can look into someone's eyes, feel everything, and still remain grounded. Because love for him is not escape, it's expansion. It's not a need to be completed, it's a choice to share completeness. And that choice, made freely, transforms everything it touches. People sense it immediately. This calm, grounded confidence that asks for nothing yet commands respect. He doesn't chase connection, he cultivates it. He doesn't prove his worth, he embodies it. He's no longer moved by flattery or destroyed by rejection. His emotions obey his mission, not the other way around. When he speaks with weight, not because his words are louder, but because they are rooted. When he loves, it's not to fill a void, but to honor a reflection. He becomes the rarest kind of man, the one who doesn't dominate through force, but through presence. Because true power never shouts, it simply is. The reborn man walks with a quiet authority that comes from knowing he can stand alone. And from that solitude, he chooses, not out of fear, not out of hunger, but out of clarity. He chooses his path, his peace, and his people. Not because he needs them to survive, but because he's finally strong enough to walk beside them, not behind them. And that, in the end, is the essence of sovereignty. To love without losing yourself, to give without begging, to stand without trembling, and to live as the man who no longer seeks the throne, because he has already built it within.